Hello and welcome to episode 6 of the Meelas, an Abu Dhabi wargaming podcast. The Meelas podcast is hosted by me, Simon, and alongside me as ever is my co-host Ibrahim, joined again by cat favourite Adam. Salam alaikum, gentlemen.
Alaikum salam.
Walaikum salam.
Our overseers are, as ever, the 4 cats of the Meelas, of whom Sindar is currently sitting on Ibrahim, and Nala had been warming my spot earlier, so I've got cat-warmed cushion.
We will do.
Yeah, Cinder's pretending to sleep.
Yeah, so he doesn't get off.
So, we were originally planning to talk about 2nd edition Warhammer 40k as a retro gaming deep dive. Then the news came through that John Blanche had passed away, aged 77, and it felt impossible to talk about old Warhammer, the Grimdark style, retro 40k, and the just general imagination of the hobby without talking about and celebrating his impact. So we'd like to dedicate this episode to him, his life and work, and the impact that he had on all of us through this hobby. With that in mind, we have our karak and our Arabic coffee. So let's start off with a special announcement about our Meelas Blanchitsu challenge. So Ibrahim, do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it was just an idea we came up with shortly after hearing of the passing and just doing a small tribute to him. Anyone can participate, of course. Just one model or diorama if you want. Really just have your creativity go wild. Obviously it has to be inspired by his palette, because what's a Blanchitsu piece without his gorgeous palette, character, atmosphere, and without having to focus on technical perfection. If you want, you can just stick your model up on socials, tag us at ad.wargaming, and we'd really love to see what you come up with.
Yeah, there's no restrictions, there's nothing official, it's not a sign-up. We're just going to be starting to paint some models individually just to pay some respects in that way.
Something we can do to attribute to him, how he has affected our approach to modeling. And yeah, we'd love to see what everyone comes up with.
Fantastic. So we will get on to our regular segment, which is what got played at the Meelas.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a couple of different games going on in the past weekend. The first of which was Necromunda. Ibrahim, you were playing that with Roman.
Yes.
How was that?
It was hilarious. It was so funny. I think the memorable thing about it was Roman leaping off this just tiny, like just a small jump, and he failed his initiative test. So he fell down that little gap, fell on another of his gangers, and got him out of action. Just bumped him like a Mario.
Like a turtle in marriage.
Exactly. And then he walked away, like just okay, fine. And then another guy wanted to leap on the same spot, but he also failed and fell down. It was just like the leap of death. Neither of them died. They just fell down. And that was really funny.
Like a lot of individual moments of things going on. Because the thing of the Necromunda is, being as a skirmish game, it tends to get down to like one-on-one situations of shots and combat and stuff.
And initially, like, there's a lot happening, and there's a lot of weird rolls you have to do, but they make sense, and they're very funny. For example, in Necromunda, whenever you're shot, you get pinned, and you kind of like jump on the floor, and because you're being shot at. So if you get pinned while on stairs, you have to roll your initiative and see if you fall down the stairs. And you have to roll damage based on how many inches you fell, and like for every inch it's like a strength 1 weapon. So you can take damage falling down the stairs in Necromunda.
It's a very interactive game, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
It looks fun.
Yeah.
It's starting to kick off. I think Roman's now been able to recruit some additional people onto the...
Yeah, we got one guy playing Orlok, another playing Cultists, and one Vansar. So I think, Simon, you're playing Asher.
Yep.
Adam, what did you pick up?
No idea.
No idea?
No idea.
We still have the squats.
Yeah, everyone keeps pushing squats at me. I mean, Roman was saying easy factions pick up, so...
One of the things about Necromunda is you can see the roots of older editions of 40k in there
Yeah, definitely.
in terms of the way the cover works. It modifies your shooting rolls. And a few other things that when Roman was explaining the rules, I'm thinking, I was playing that second edition earlier.
Yeah, I just seconded, but I saw like how fun second was, which moves us kind of to the.
Yeah, we'll get onto that. We played 560 points, because that's how many points of orcs you had in total when I amended my Marines to that size, of second edition. Now, you tell me how you found it, because this is 6 editions earlier than you first ever played Warhammer, I guess.
It's like, how many years before?
1993,
Oh my God.
this first came out.
I was minus 4 years old. So I loved it structurally, but I think I would have enjoyed it even more if I was playing a different faction. Orcs is a horde faction.
Yeah.
And that shows really, like in 40k you'll see someone with like mechs and stuff, but no, second they were a horde faction. You need like 560 points was 30 models.
Yeah.
Sure, 20 were Gretchen, but still that's a lot.
They were your 2 screening units of 10 Gretchen each to make sure I couldn't shoot your orcs behind them.
Yeah.
And even though one set of Gretchen immediately scarpered on turn 1 after taking a frag missile, and then never came back because of their leadership of 5.
Cowering in the corner.
Whereas the other Gretchen got some good shooting in, didn't they?
Oh yeah, they did a lot of damage. They even shot your, I think the damage on your captain.
Rolled a double 1 for trying to save one of the autogun shots.
Yeah.
And as they have a 3-up save when you roll the 2 on 2d6, that was really unhelpful.
Yeah.
It was just the kind of, roll a dice, it's 10, roll a dice 7, roll another dice 2. How dare you?
Yeah, the Gretchen did well. I guess the.
And then they got annihilated in Close Combat.
Yeah, they got just smashed in. But yeah, it was fun. Like even after that game, I was like, I have some old Thousand Sons.
Yeah, I could do chaos, you said to me.
I think I was hobbying, and then you come back into the Meelas with several boxes of things I haven't seen in about, say, 15, 17 years.
Yeah, just old Thousand Sons with that. Even not like the fine cast was metallic, like
proper
upgrades.
Metal, proper second, third ed stuff.
And that's gonna be my.
And you worked out 1,500 points of 1,000 Suns chaos that you specifically had already.
Yeah, and it was not that many models compared to orcs. I think I had a unit of 7 rubric marines, a unit of 6 rubric marines, Arman, a Lord of Change, a sorcerer, and then 1 unit of 6 pink horrors.
I'm looking forward to that, because you might own the psychic phase when we work that out.
Yeah, it should be fun to completely mess up my army and have them all die. Turn 2 somehow. Because I remember reading the rules and one of the abilities, there's a chance your souls get sucked in or something.
Yeah, so the thing with 1,000 Suns is the Rubric Marine's special mark of Tzeentch is that if a certain warp card is played in the psychic phase, you have to take off D6 of your Rubric Marines, which could be horrendous. And it's a card that either player can get drain energy. So basically the psychic phase ends, all the warp cards are taken away. Really powerful card if your opponent draws it. But with Ahriman, you're more likely to get it on your side and be like, I'm not playing this because I'll just kill half my army.
Yeah, fair. But yeah.
I'm really looking forward to see that. Both the force in general on the table and also how you paint them.
Oh, it's going to definitely be fun.
With only 15 Marines, you're looking at being able to really spend some time on them. Compared to, say, 40 Gretchen and going, I have to do the same model 40 times.
It's a lot of trim, though.
No, it's not actually. They're not like the new 1,000 Suns. It's more calmed down, I think. And because the scale is smaller, it's not as bad as the new chaos stuff. The new chaos stuff, just you're gonna spend like 3 years painting drums.
It's not like you're doing a Helldrake, which is somehow 106% trim.
Oh, yeah, that's a nightmare. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemies.
Didn't you give it to your brother?
Yeah, I wish them were my brother, that's fine. He's not my worst enemy.
Ahmed was still waiting for you to finish that Helldrake in the cupboard.
I don't think he'll ever get to that, which is completely fair. Because, oh man. But yeah, I enjoy painting blue, apparently. Okay, when I painted Sahil's Pablo
Cantor.
Cantor.
Pedro Cantor.
Oh yeah, Pablo Pedro. Same. But yeah, I think I'll enjoy painting them in the same way at least.
Like if I keep using my Lamenters, I'm going to have to add Dante or something to them because
I turned it to
if you've got Ahriman and Lord of Change in there as well, it's like HeroHammer begins.
Hey, it's what I have.
That's true.
And yeah,
you don't have to buy anything additional to make your army. That's the great thing. You can actually do proper Thousand Suns based force, which I'm really looking forward to see because I do love Thousand Suns.
Oh yeah, I mean that Thousand Suns were one of my favorite. Always stuck out in terms of the design, the Egyptian theme, and sort of like when I saw your guys, I just thought, wow.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I had an epic army that was Thousand Suns.
Oh, that's gonna be nice.
I mean, it wasn't nice because I was 12, but
otherwise, at least
conceptually, it was really nice.
The idea was good.
Yeah, the Warlord Titan with pipe cleaners that became tentacles for equivalent power fist. That was a good idea, but not necessarily well executed. But speaking of what we were doing for painting, I think rather than say what's on the hobby table this week, we should say what's on our hobby table that John Blanche has inspired us to make.
Yep.
So, Adam, what are you going to be doing for your Blanchitsu challenge?
Well, obviously, I'm going to go for a very unique old design that, I mean, when I got into 3rd edition, it was something which blew my mind, and that's the Gothic Armada battleship itself, the one coming out the warp with the red front. I remember as a kid, I absolutely loved that artwork. It was insane. And I never got into Gothic Armada, but I mean, I think we already established how much I love ships, and I was playing Drop Fleet last week and so on and so forth. So it was a design what really, made me love the universe of Warhammer, especially 40k. And whenever, obviously, someone talks about John Blanche and his artwork, and there's so many good artworks out there, I can start listing out Black Templars.
We'll get onto it.
Yeah, exactly. But that Gothic battleship is just something which I would love to paint, and I've got an idea in my head on how to paint it. So hopefully it works out well.
So you'll be making the reenacting the cover of Battlefleet Gothic. Ibrahim, what about you? What are you going to be making for your Blanchitsu piece?
I've been kit bashing Cawdor, a priest, and I just spent last night kit bashing the hell out of him. Like, he got this chain axe with a flamer on top, holding a grenade with a servo skull linked to a gas tank flying beside him.
Nice.
And just covered in robes, and I'm thinking of adding a lot of checker, some flames on the bottom of the robe, thinking of a lot of black, yellow, and red with he has candles as well on his head because he's Cawdor, why not?
Of course.
Yeah.
Because he's a kobold, really.
Exactly. He's a kobold. Exactly. Cover him, of course, in just oils, brown oils, a bit of ochre there. Should be fun to do. And I'm not mass painting him, so it's going to be...
Is he going to be included in your Cawdor force, or is he like a separate project?
He's going to be my leader for my Necromunda gang.
Amazing.
So it's a bit of 2-in-1. Initially I wanted to do something completely separate, like a standalone model. But when I saw that box, I was like, I think this scores more than 2 Blanchitsu style. And a lot of his stuff as well, if you look at his models, it's a lot of kit-bashed stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of taking out from his art and his general miniature style. And obviously putting it in one of his favorite games, which is Necromunda.
Simon, what's on your list?
I am going to do the Canoness Viridian model, which is the cover star of the Sisters of Battle Codex that he did.
Nice.
Because I mean, he just said, "Oh, this is just Debbie Harry in 40K,"
Yeah.
and that's such an iconic piece of artwork. It's very cool. I love that edition of White Dwarf that it was on. I never had this as a battle army or anything, so this would be a good opportunity to paint her up in not trying to match the cover art, but more trying to match how I feel the style of John Blanche speaks to me. Not necessarily realistic as such, but that kind of sketchy concept art style. It's more my vision of what he does.
So a big part of the Blanchitsu style, like I've been reading a lot about it recently. I've had his book for a while. I finished it, I think, twice now. I don't know why I keep rereading it. It's just a gorgeous book. And a big part of his style is that it's a vibe. It's not really just colors. It is initially like just muted colors and that kind of mindset, but it's more of a feel. Like, what do you see as Blanchitsu? I think was his mindset.
I think we'll move on to our favorites of his pieces in a moment, but as well as what we're doing, a couple of other guys have already piped up with what they're going to do. Zaheen, one of our major Imperial Fist players, is going to do a Black Templar from the 3rd edition cover, which is, I think, one of John Blanche's favorite pieces of work as well, that he did for the 3rd edition box set. When Rick Priestley said, which of the big four are you going to do? By big four, he meant Blood Angels, Dark Angels, Space Wolves, Ultramarines. And John Blanche said, no, I'm going to do something black because that's my favorite color. And Rick Priestley says, okay, off you go and find a black chapter then. You're going to have to invent one. And he goes looking through the lore in the archives and discovers, oh, Black Templars, Maltese Cross. Interesting. I'm just going to do that. So he just went away and spent 3 months on that cover art. And I think it shows how iconically Blanche that cover is, more so than almost any other cover, I think. It's so his style. His fingerprints are all over it.
Yeah, and it also calls out to his love of using history as a primary source for all of his artwork and painting and just general approach. Because Warhammer feels like a historical Dark Age mirror into the future. That's why it feels like a bit departed from usual sci-fi stuff.
Yeah, it's not hopeful.
Yeah, and also, like, sure, it does take some parts of Dune, Star Wars, and all of that, but it also has its own identity that is becoming itself an inspiration to other systems. You know, Grimdark is easily attributed to Warhammer.
And specifically John Blanche himself.
Yeah, specifically. You can see it in second. Second is very colorful. It has its bright greens, bright reds, bright yellows, and then you look at the third. It's very dark, and after that it just stuck to that because it really resembled the spirit of Warhammer.
See, for me, I think the second box and the miniatures and the way it was presented were, as you say, very bright, very colorful, very kind of kid-friendly, very classic sci-fi good and bad guys. But a lot of the supporting artwork that he did for it was already in that, as we'd call now the Grimdark style, was already horrific and dark and not remotely hopeful whatsoever. And the box kind of belied the rest of the art he did, done for a certain audience to appeal to. But even then, all my favorite stuff from that time is the little sketches that appeared in the corner of a book somewhere that were like, oh, that's horrible, but amazing.
Yeah.
You could see that these codexes had these images in there. I think it was the Eldar image that we mentioned previously, which was within the 2nd edition book, but it was never going to be one of the main pieces of art that you see in 2nd edition. 2nd edition was going for a slightly different theme in terms of very kid-friendly. It's interesting when you look at that 2nd edition box compared to any of his other art. It's so different. I wouldn't even think that is him who's actually designed that itself. Yep. I mean, it's still a great piece. I mean, it's something that they've utilized for 11th edition as well now. And it shows that his imprint is even still ongoing nowadays. The 11th edition box is basically a copy of the 2nd edition box, except with some updates.
Yeah. I think that kick of nostalgia for that kind of era is something that we've touched on it before in previous episodes, but I think that now Warhammer is being made by people who have grown up with Warhammer. So they're looking back to the stuff they liked and are reproducing it and readapting it. Whereas in the original times, it was making something new, drawing from a few influences that they had, Foundation, Dune, as you said, things like that. Whereas now they're kind of drawing their influences from older Warhammer sources and very few other things. So it's starting to feed on itself.
I think John Blanche did 9 of the Primarchs. And if you look at the current models in Horus Heresy, they're all very much similar to the design. I think there's been some tweaks as they adapted it to the models.
You're right. Generally, those sketches, those paintings, kind of defined their look, didn't it?
If you compare the model with the original art that John Blanche did, you'll see a lot of similarities. Just little bits that they was obviously influenced by that art piece.
Yeah, because even those Primarchs, he was still thinking about what a miniature would look like, even though he didn't think they would end up making a miniature. And how can you make a random general stand out on the battlefield? And the answer is something winged, big hair, big helmets, big backpacks, big sword, something iconic that you'd see on the other side of the table and immediately know who that character is. And so even those paintings were done that way. And that's what, when they designed the miniatures, were suddenly the easiest things to give the minis personality, because that's what they were intended for.
I think that's why I kind of dislike the Primaris range a bit, because it doesn't feel like it resonates with that style.
John Blanche himself said he liked Primaris.
Yeah, I don't get it.
He liked the true scale nature of it, and something he said relatively late on in life was that he'd love to do a Black Templar squad of Primaris Marines, because he really liked the way the design felt.
So like the true scale, I get, because that's definitely one of the best improvements they did. But if you compare it to the tactical squads and where it was a bit of a mishmash of different armor marks, I think that's what it missed, which is being produced now, which is amazing.
Yeah, it's being corrected with like Mark 7.
Yeah, which is scary also for me,
Yeah.
because that's just begging for a Black Templar army. Oh my god.
Uh-oh.
You're going to have to do it to that.
You know, it's tough to not start new armies when we're on a wargaming podcast. Like that's every time you guys mention anything, I'm like you mentioned Gothic Armada, by the way, in my head, I was like, man, I need to do those Chaos Space. Like, and then when you mentioned like second, I was, man, like those Thousand Sons, they need those flavors. I should be doing them.
We've gone through a lot of our miniatures and the inspiration behind them, but what does Blanchitsu mean to you? For me, it's the palette, the blacks, dark browns, ochres, reds, yellows, oranges. That sketch style of the inks on the paper. That's where I see it most. Yeah, yes, pencil drawings, and yes, large box art covers and stuff, but the thing that I kind of remember most is those pages of White Dwarf that would just be his sketches, where they say, here's some background stuff for how he imagined Necromunda, and just the kind of the scratchy style and the bright reds everywhere and the very muted blues. And that's what it means to me, even though my favorite stuff is probably the pencil works. So for you guys, what does it mean to you when you say, what's the John Blanche style? What is Blanchitsu?
Obviously, you can mention Grimdark. That's probably the easy answer, but I'm very much with you. I mean, you look at his style, it's so defining with just the shapes of everything. It doesn't feel soft or round or anything like that. It's a sharp, purposeful design which really defines his art style with the color scheme. Like you said, the color scheme itself is very orange, yellow, reds, really coming at you. My 3 favorite John Blanche art pieces, obviously I mentioned the Gothic Armada, one of my favorites ever. The Emperor on the Golden Throne, absolutely amazing art piece, which I think was within the 3rd edition rulebook itself, the cover art, which obviously when I got into a 40k. And then Black Templar, which we mentioned previously, his masterpiece.
I think for me it would be his overall energy, how it affected a lot of miniature painters, how it affected kid bashing all of that can be attributed just to his art style. As far as the art, his art is just so memorable. We were talking about like our favorite art piece. I can't think of just one. It just melts into, when you're a kid and you're going through those just random pictures, like that's how I feel. I feel this is what drove me into Warhammer. Like this is what made me love this universe. Just how these pictures show this world, and especially the pictures that wouldn't just focus on battles or space marines or orcs or whatever. It's the art he did for the background. So you'll see like the mechanical priests just piled on each other. The art piece on the Eternity Gate, which is gorgeous as well.
With
The
those two
Emperor.
custodians with the massive axes as
Yeah.
the gate like I think it's the throne, but it's sort of the gate at the same time goes up and up and up and up and up in the background, and there's the flying skulls and the cherubs and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, and all of his art on like his famous piece on the Emperor. It's what our Warhammer is to me, is purely John Blanche. Whenever I see anything that's not covered in those colors, not covered in oil and grimy and dark, I know, we have like literally mirroring maybe approach on some stuff.
From being somebody who started with second edition, a lot of the pieces that helped define the overall look were the bright ones, like the Dave Gallagher ones and John Blanche when he did stuff like the second edition box. But the ones that really stick with me, I mean, probably my favorite piece of his is the Terminator captain with the Aquila badge stamped on his forehead and the banner behind, like, "They shall know no fear." That for me completely defined the whole look of a Space Marine, this Terminator, and the whole atmosphere behind it. I also love his sketch style. So the Null Maiden, the Primarchs, one of a Cawdor Redemptionist in a random white dwarf, which looks very similar to the one you're kit bashing. His Necrons that were more organic, up to random things like there was a squat land train for Epic, and some of his fantasy pieces as well that stick out in my mind. There was the Night Panther, plus all the stuff he did for Inquisitor as well.
Oh yeah, his Inquisitors are all just, the thing I associate John Blanche with, obviously apart from his main pieces, if he defined factions such as the Inquisition and the Tech Priests of Mars, that red scheme itself.
Yeah, he's got so many Mechanicum and Tech Priest images, that the bright red cloaks, the kind of the body horror, the mechanical bits, just the weirdness of like, what is this character?
Yeah, I mean, as a Mechanicum player, it's inspirational to myself. I mean, I try and keep to that grimdark red theme from my own Mechanicum from Mars.
One thing that really saddens me is that during his John Sorcery interview, he mentioned that after starting his own company, one thing he wanted to focus on is producing more games in the 54 millimeter scale. The main part that saddens me is like what he could have made or what can be made out of his inspiration on that range.
Yeah, how much has he done background work for that? How many sketches are there that they haven't used yet?
Yeah.
What does that art book going to look like? What is that rule book going to look like? Because we've seen the miniatures and they're all very much directly out of his kind of wheelhouse of what miniatures should look like.
Yeah. And they're gorgeous. They're so grimdark. And I really hope that his company continue to produce more stuff or more games based on his artwork, because I know that he also loved hand sculpting compared to digital ones. That's why all of the new models are all hand sculpted, and you can tell like there's a lot of character in hand sculpted models.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you can really see the sculptor's input and his influence on
And
them.
there's no like over sculpted details and extra stuff that you wouldn't be able to do by hand. You could see it that's in the corner somewhere.
Another point is also, again, this is all based on his interviews, is that the art he would make was purposefully made to be turned into models. That's why it's so easy to see a lot of models inspired by his art, because he was also the art designer for like the artwork of the stuff that will turn into models anyway. So that's why a lot of the stuff is attributed to him. But anyways, I really hope his company continues to grow and become what he really wanted to be.
Have you guys ever seen any of his painted models himself? Because he is known obviously for his artwork, but he's obviously one of the only painted models I've ever seen him do is the Chaos Minotaur, the Mona Lisa banner. Which is, I mean, to do the Mona Lisa, I think he won an award back in the 80s for this model. And he did it from a complete scratch. He painted this on a 32mm model, and it's got the Mona Lisa just casually on the...
casually on a Chaos banner with like an Evil Sun's looking logo above it.
So the one thing about him, which also like is a big miss, is that after his 2001 stroke, he wasn't really able to paint miniatures as he wanted to. Like it was harder for him. And like imagine if he continued on that path and what other miniatures we would have had if it wasn't for that.
Yeah, because all the ones you see are very, very early in like 3rd edition Warhammer, Rogue Trader era, those sorts of miniatures. And I saw some of his, he had like a Chaos Space Marine army that looked like the most evil looking Howling Griffins you've ever seen, because they were all red and yellow and black in all random combinations in the squads. And there's all of his Warhammer models themselves were all very weird and greebly and outlandish and not remotely the kind of style that G-Dub ended up with, but you could see how he took their basis of models and really messed around with them to go into his own ethos and idiom of it.
He was really doing Grimdark back in the 80s when Grimdark wasn't a thing. You know, you look back in 2nd edition, the high contrasting paints and stuff. It was obviously not what GW were promoting in their own models, but he really went into that direction, which obviously reflected into his artwork. And then Games Workshop saw an opportunity to go down that path. And, you know, this is now look where we are in the Grimdark universe.
Yeah, I mean, don't forget the 90s, everything got darker and edgier without really understanding what dark and edgy meant. And suddenly bright colors turned into dark colors, and it was kind of a vibe that you couldn't really define. But what he was able to do was set out what grim and dark meant. And so much so that you remove the comma and grimdark becomes one word and a particular style. But speaking of the 90s, that's where our retro gaming story is drawn to. Because with our starting off in 2nd edition, and it seems like lots of other people are starting off in 2nd edition, this new edition of 40k that is echoing some of the things from 2nd is prompting lots of people to say, hey, why don't we just play 2nd or 3rd or an equivalent system?
I think we mentioned that GW wanted to call that nostalgia to pull people into Armageddon or back into Armageddon, and then they accidentally got everyone to play 2nd edition.
Original.
Like, oh, you got an Armageddon? Yeah, well, we got Armageddon at home. The original Armageddon, at least.
I mean, for me, it's nostalgia.
Yeah.
And for Adam, it's nostalgia for you of that kind of era. But Ibrahim, as you say, you started in 8th. You're getting our nostalgia glow and thinking, that sounds cool.
I love to see things where they originally came from. So that's my general approach to most things, is I love to see why the things are the way they are now from a historical perspective.
Gonna have to try Rogue Trader next.
Yeah, I guess I just keep going back instead of...
So Rogue Trader and the way 40k played then was literally a skirmish game that was almost a role-playing game. You sort of needed a game master to referee random stuff going on. But then as kind of armies get bigger and more unwieldy, can we go mainstream with a proper army game? And so 1993 was when 2nd edition came out. And that's what started the structure of the rule book, the war gear book, and the codexes for each army, which the first one was Space Wolves that came out shortly after. And it's not quite in the same identity as 40k would become. I would say it's had 2 or 3 identities over its lifetime, and it hadn't really found itself yet. So 2nd was that kind of bridge in between D&D and Rogue Trader to where we ended up with kind of the Juggernaut. That started here. And I think when we played last week, you kind of got that impression of, imagine if this was the first game of this type you'd ever played. This was amazing.
Yep.
Because nothing came before it that was quite like it.
I think when I started 8th, it was only because it was just Warhammer. It wasn't because I enjoyed 8th. I honestly hardly played 8th. Like, I remember I only played 3, maybe, matches of that. That's it. I just played, 9th was probably the most I played, and not because I enjoyed it as much as there was a league in Abu Dhabi. I didn't get it. Like, it was fine, but didn't feel thematic to me. It didn't feel like, I don't know, it didn't touch me the way Heresy did. And I think that's also another aspect. Like, would you really be playing second if there was no calling for it? There was no one else to play it? Probably it will be tough to play alone, I guess. It's
I think there'd probably be collecting and painting in that style.
yeah.
But without an opponent, there's not a game to play.
And that's how it has been my almost 80% of my Warhammer experience has been reading the lore, watching videos on it, and painting. That's it. I hardly played. But now with our community, it gives that opportunity to go back to these editions, to play different games, to see what we like, see what other guys like, and then play it, because why not? It's just rolling dice with some toy soldiers. And that's what we love to do, mostly.
I never played 2nd edition. I was a 3rd edition guy. You have more troops on the table and such. But I have seen 2nd edition. I have seen what Rogue Trader was about. I've read into the history. I've seen YouTube videos about it. And you can see that 2nd edition was that bridge. I mean, you mentioned about having only a handful of troops. I think when you were playing, you had how many troops on the table?
Well, for 500 points, I had 11.
11.
For 1,000 points, I had 17.
Yeah.
And, well, a tactical squad was 300 points because Marines are super badass inhuman warriors.
Yeah.
So,
like, that's, I think, also missing from the way they approach new 40k, because it's approaching it from a competitive perspective. In the last 3 editions, I think they've been walking away from a thematic game. Like, in a thematic game, don't expect to win. It's fine to walk into a game not expecting to win, but you're gonna leave with a story.
absolutely.
And that's something Warhammer, I think, lost, which I really hope that they bring back with this new focus, as they say, on narrative. But we'll see, I guess.
I think it's a few different things at once. In any game, there is like an emergent narrative that comes out anyway. Things happen at random, and you can put your stories together based on that. But I think the emphasis on 40k recently is the competitive aspect, and it doesn't feel like you're running around with units. It feels like you're playing with magic cards. As units you put on the table. I play card, slide forward, tap, something happens.
You know, I remember back in 3rd edition, my first army was Tau. I know what you think about them, Simon.
I think they're perfectly fine for people who like that sort of thing. I have nothing majorly against them other than I don't understand them.
Yeah, fish people. But I remember playing, obviously I was a very young person, barely knew the rules and just making them up. But
You're going through.
I mean, he hasn't changed much.
yeah, they haven't changed much. What am I doing here? I think I'm in the wrong hobby.
Catching strays is what you're doing.
I do remember against, fire warriors, standard warriors in Tau, they have simple guns, shooting at a bunch of Terminators who are slowly going across the table, maybe killing 1 out of a squad of 5, and they wipe out my whole 20 men. So that pretty much was one of my core memories back in 3rd edition, and that sort of shows like, you don't have fire warriors fighting against elite units. You need to bring some strong rocket launchers, AP2 damage, which will do damage to these guys. And I think we had this with Horus Heresy. I mean, Simon will get his Terminators into my guys. He'll kill my Magos leading my automators. And then he's like, well, I can't do anything against your automators who are now stuck in combat because their leader is dead. And
my Crimson Paladins with just their power swords couldn't do anything. I'm fishing for the occasional 6 to wound and get a breaching.
Yeah.
because they're just not AP2 against
And
solid robots.
And at this point, you're about 2 inches away from my objective, which I'm just scoring points. And you're like, any time now? Okay, 6 turns of combat, and there's still one left. But yeah, I mean, that's the whole reason why we enjoy stuff like Horus Heresy, 2nd edition, 3rd edition for my case, or any other combat games that we play, because of that thematical feel of, automators, you kill if there's no one leading them, they are just dumb robots. They won't run away, they will just stand there and keep on fighting, because that is what they're known for.
A lot of like modern games, like for example World of Warcraft, I think Guild Wars, are making a lot of the like vanilla experience, like playing the classic games.
Yep.
And I don't know why GW hasn't jumped on that as well, because it will cost them nothing to republish those books, create an app with these rules, because New Recruit already has that, which is also another, like, it was a big incentive for me to play 2nd edition, because I'm a Gen Z, I guess.
You're not going to get out a pen and a piece of
paper. Like, no way. Like, I see Excel enough, I don't want to go home and look at an Excel sheet enough again. So that's one of the biggest incentive for me to play 2nd. Like, it looks amazing, it looks fun, but also it's accessible.
It's a solved game.
Yeah, and you can just go on New Recruit, click on the 2nd edition tab, build an army. How hard is that? I know how these things work. GW can do it.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, imagine if they had that for 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and people can use 40k models, because you're not gonna need. You don't have to use the retro models. Like, sure, it looks cool to have the same era of miniatures, but like Old World, it worked out. Like, even if they want to sell them, people will buy them. Like, Old World has been doing amazing, apparently. And maybe it's because it went back to the roots, because they're doing the old models. Scarring.
There's rumors about them looking into the scouring itself, obviously introducing Mark 7 and sell more models, which I find interesting. If they will allow the scouring period and the Horus Heresy period like intertwine, I don't want a brand new game mode. If it was just an extension of Horus Heresy where you can use, that would be perfect, and that would sell models.
Bit of DLC.
Yeah, a DLC. Yeah, exactly. It's the scouring. How I see it, the scouring, and they are releasing books now. The scouring is part of the Heresy as well. You're still chasing after the same guys who've just killed put the Emperor on the throne. And
dude, spoilers. I haven't got to that book yet.
Emperor on the throne? You end up there?
Yeah, ignore everything about John Blanche's painting.
But yeah, I think they don't need a whole new range. It's all there. So it's just about the rules and integrating them into the whole rule book.
So the way 2nd Ed plays, different to Heresy and other variations of games you played, it's a small force. The characters are big and powerful. The various upgrades in terms of war gear cards you can add on. We didn't touch on psychic powers yet, because we didn't kind of delve into that. But you're looking at the vehicles specifically. I mean, that one point where my Marine's missile launcher hit your dreadnought, and it's a case of, okay, where do I hit? And you roll randomly on the table, and it was the left leg or something. And then, okay, can I penetrate this particular armor from the front versus the side and rear versus the hull versus the arms or whatever? And then, okay, I penetrated. Now what do we do? And in which case you were reduced to moving D3 inches a turn. But that could have been a 6 and been, he's knocked over, down he goes, and he's destroyed on the floor.
Yeah.
And compared to a tank has 8 hull points, and it just carries on going until that point. Whereas all the vehicles and dreadnoughts and walkers, etc., in 2nd edition are completely unique damage tables for each of them. Like, how did you find that in terms of making those dramatic narrative incidents happen?
Well, you can clearly see where Necromunda takes a lot of its flavor from, is directly from 2nd. Like, if you love Necromunda, you will enjoy 2nd, because of all those different table and charts that it takes forever, but like, that's still fun. Like, you're just looking at the different stuff and that you can end up with. it's just interesting to me. Like I love that randomness, because that's what sometimes a war game should feel like. Because like on the battlefield, you never know what's happening or what happens.
You've touched on it there, that it can take forever because you have to look up at it. Can be a nightmare. We only played 500 points with one vehicle. Whereas if you're playing a 2,000 point game and you have 4 vehicles and some bikes and 3 special characters, all with their own war gear, all of a sudden it starts to grind and crunch and becomes very clunky because it's not really designed for armies of that size. And I know that White Dwarf kind of pivoted everybody to 2,000 points being the standard, which was enough to fit lots of cool stuff in, but to actually play that could take all day, could take 5 or 6 hours. As a kid, I remember we'd start in the morning and we'd have lunch, and then we'd be finished just before dinner maybe, and you'd suddenly realize I've just spent forever and I got 4 turns out of that. But I think as long as you don't mind looking up these rules, as long as you don't mind needing all the cards, the social contract of we are going to tell a story through a war game here, rather than I am going to try and beat you being the main thrust of the objective. Because obviously we're all going to try and play to the rules. We're going to try and play to win, not get killed, achieve the objectives, etc. Because that's the aim of the game. But the playing of it is where that narrative comes in.
A lot of the narrative missions in some of the editions I remember reading would specifically say like, this is not going to be a balanced game, and you are likely to lose. But again, if you have the narrative priority mindset, you'll always walk into a game not caring if you win or lose. You'll be more interested in leaving with a story, because that game you'll remember.
And that's the kind of spirit that it was played in, that you'd say, I'm surrounded, I'm outnumbered, but bring it. Let's try it.
And those games are the best because it adds a thematic story, doesn't it? And then you really immerse yourself. I'm defending this. I'm the one, like, last stand, and can I hold out until reinforcements come? And you've mentioned for 2nd edition, we have New Recruit, which has all the weapon rules included.
Yep.
We just open it up, we can press on it, and it has it there. Can you imagine trying to find the weapon profiles, flicking through the books back in...
Yes, I can. I remember.
You was there.
I was there, and when we played it, I still had to on my phone as well, because the actual rule interactions are in the book, except when they're not in the book and they're in a different book. And like armor penetration on grenades is not listed in the weapon profile. In 3 different places where the weapon profile is set in the 2 different rule books, it's only in one specific place that it gives you the armor penetration of a crack grenade, which is really unhelpful. And you have to get past that when you're playing this edition, because you know that they didn't have enough passes on the rulebook. They didn't have enough QC or play testing, because it was just 5 or 6 guys in the studio writing and playing games.
Which modern games from Games Workshop, and all of the modern games, which you have to give credit to Games Workshop, is they do play test these and they put enough effort into it so that it's easy to find these rules and so on and so forth.
It's easier to get people into these games now, because you don't have to have all the 17 different White Dwarfs for specific units. You don't have to give away a book to someone for them to read at home, and then you want to read it but you can't, because it's all on your phone.
Yeah.
You can just put up everything in front of you. You can make a whole list within 10 minutes without having to scroll through hundreds of pages to figure out the points of blast gun. And it's so much easier now. So alhamdulillah for that. But it's also about people's willingness to try different games and systems, because if you don't have that, I mean, I get it. It's an investment, both time and to learn the game, and of course buying the models, painting them. It is a big investment, but again, you can always proxy, see what you like, and then stick to that. But I think the thing that pushes a lot of people away is learning the rules. And Honestly, for second, I think it was the beauty of it. Is if you play 40k Necromunda Heresy, it's easy to grasp. It's not that deep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you look at 10th, 11th, you're looking at command points, now detachment points, all of this just to try and figure out an army and how it works.
Yeah.
Whereas second is just pick some squads until you've got X amount of points. Pick up to X amount of points of characters. Done. And actually, I think the rules at the base level are extremely easy to learn. The only problem comes where little interactions happen and you have to double check. So as long as you don't mind those times when you have to go, hold on, let's both read this paragraph and see how we interpret it, because this is weird, which is all over the place in second edition.
The idea is interesting. Like you're getting like orbital support. You're getting special stuff happening, which is fine, but that can be just a skill in a model.
Yeah, I would second it when you get the expansion for the Dark Millennium box, had strategy cards.
Yeah.
And you'd get one for every part of 1,000 points your army had.
Which makes sense.
And we just have a card that you'd play and go, cool, done.
Second edition, it really defines a lot of the future of the editions. I mean, we're talking about,
it's a pillar.
Second edition started having characters included, started including vehicles and, templates which have been removed in the latter editions of 40k, but are included in other games such as Heresy. I believe Necromunda as well.
Yep.
It's easier to say, I am shooting you with a flamer, this is how much damage you get. But it's not as fun and interactive as to put down a flame template, that big teardrop at the base of one model and say, who am I hitting? These guys.
Yeah. I remember getting back into 40k at 10th edition, and I was like, where are the templates? Like, what is this? I'm like, well, I want my big blast marker doing 5 inches and killing everyone in sight. But yeah, I didn't realize that came from second edition. Obviously third edition included it within its starter box set, as well as the long whippy
that wasn't a second edition one. You didn't get a whippy stick to do your measurement with.
So you get a whippy stick with a metal Brock's dreadnought. It was a deadly combination for any 10-year-olds. But second edition really implemented a lot of rules. I think the codexes were, you mentioned the Space Wolves was the first codex.
Originally, in the box set, you got a thing called Codex Army Lists, which was a very thin paper booklet that gave you very, very basic army lists for all sorts of different factions. Like squats were in there. Like Tyranids had like 1 page or half a page almost, because it's basically take a hive tyrant and take broods, and that's it. And that's the whole army list. But what it then did was come out with the individual books. So it came out with Space Wolves, Angels of Death, that was Blood Angels and Dark Angels, and Ultramarines, that was generic Space Marines. Chaos was just 1 book for everything, whereas squats, for example, just stayed in the Codex Army List, never got used again.
And then obviously these codexes include history of each army.
Yeah, you have, as per usual, you had the first half was all the lore, then the middle section was color photos of the army that they were trying to sell you, and then it was the army list and stats and points values.
So I find that interesting. That came from second edition. Those codexes in third edition was a massive inspiration of what army I wanted to collect itself. Nice to see that. Second edition just implemented so many things.
Yeah. So like with orcs, when they show you how each of the orc clans look, having given you all the lore about them, and then bits about Armageddon and bits about Ghazghkull Thraka, and the story was the first half, and you just spend hours, days just poring over the stories and build your army with the list in the back.
So characters, then we mentioned Ghazghkull. Was that seen in Rogue Trader at all?
Second was when you started it turned into HeroHammer at that point, where the special characters got to be so powerful that everybody was taking them all the time. So your Ghazghkull, your Eldrad Ulthuan, your Marneus Calgar, they would just be on every battlefield.
All the chapter masters for the main Space Marines came from that era, wasn't it?
Yep, Dante, Marneus Calgar, Ragnar Blackmane, Azrael, yeah.
So one thing I like when you mentioned the whole army is on page. What made the initial lists interesting is that it's not the amount of models you have, it's the amount of options that you can customize that unit with. You open the Horus Heresy or seconded or probably the first 7 editions, 8 editions of Warhammer, and you're just bombarded with options. But that's where the fun is. Like you don't have to know everything. Like it's fine to try things out. It's fine to mess up and learn. That's the point, and that's what takes away from the new editions and boosts the older editions. The amount of options you have, not the amount of models you have. Like okay, you have like in 11th, I think you're gonna have 7 different Primaris units that are focused on killing infantry. Like, okay, but how are they special? Like they're doing the same thing. You could have just made one unit with all of those options rather than all of that. I know it takes more kit bashing, it makes more of that kind of stuff, but it makes them units also yours, not similar to anything else.
Exactly. So when you look at a Space Marine tactical squad, you can give them one special weapon, you can give them one heavy weapon, and then your sergeant can have, does he want a power fist, does he want a power sword, does he want a power axe, does he want a special weapon? And so you can tailor your squads that way to say, this one is about killing tanks, this one is about killing infantry, this one is all purpose. Your Space Marine captain, do you want him on a bike or not? Do you want him in Terminator armor or not? What set of grenades does he take of the 6 options of grenades he can take? Does he want a bolter, a flamer, a melter, or a plasma? Then you add on his war gear cards that as a captain he can take 3, which can take him in completely different places. Ridiculous stuff. Just to flavor him exactly as you want for the job you want them to do.
It will also be interesting to see how that evolved. Like how did that affect 3rd? How that affected 4th? How 4th affected 5th? And so on. I think we can start with 5th.
I mean, war gears became equipment, didn't they? It just became standard equipment that you could add on to characters. But then you had to think, look at, if you're referring to Horus Heresy, then see your Voxes, augury scanners, so on and so forth. That isn't a extension of the war gear, what was established in 2nd edition, I believe. It was just, now it have points implemented onto it, which was the same in 2nd edition. Each war gear had points.
Absolutely.
I remember that in 8th. Like, it did stick around for a very long time. But I think it got kind of removed in 9th. That's an essential part, I think, of any war game.
Yeah.
But it's also nice to see GW still implementing these systems in Horus Heresy and Necromunda as well.
Yeah, the ability to make these troops your guys and customize them the way you want them to be, not just select the unit, done.
That's what I kind of dislike about the new editions, but I mean, that's the beauty of the interwebs. You can always go back.
Yeah.
So I think if we summarize 2nd specifically as you'll like 2nd if you like a narrative game, if you don't mind the rules being a bit weird and crunchy sometimes, if you like a small army that's got a big personality, and you're happy to have a laugh when something insane happens that could be hugely detrimental to yourself.
Yeah.
You will hate 2nd edition if you want a balanced competitive game, because that is unlikely to happen unless you really work it out beforehand. If you don't like charts and tables to roll on, if you don't like specialized dice, if you want it to be fast and clean and obvious, it's not the game for you. And if you don't like random swingy nonsense, oh yeah, he just dies on a 6. What? the story from last episode, my Terminator charging a Rhino automatically hits a vehicle. Thunderhammer automatically penetrates whichever location I choose. I choose the hull because it's best for me, and I roll, I think it was a 4 or 5, which is Rhino's destroyed, spins round to a random direction, stays there for the rest of the game. Oh, and every occupant is killed. No save allowed, not even rolling for it. They're just dead. And that was 400 points killed in one hit. And
those are the stories that you laugh about. And we were talking about it a week later, and this is a memory. It's a core memory now.
Still funny and still stupid. And I would have hated it to happen to me, but that's not in a competitive game. It's in a fun game, something weird happened.
It's weird playing a game for fun, isn't it?
I know.
I know.
Revolutionary.
Revolutionary.
Absolutely out
Doesn't
of the
need to be
world.
competitive at all.
Play
It depends what you want out of your game. If you feel like the aim of a game is to win,
Don't come to the
don't play second.
Don't come to the Meelas.
Or you'll play second in a certain way and nobody will like it.
No.
But if you think that the whole point of a game is to have fun with your friends, then it's absolutely the game for you.
Playing games for fun.
Friends?
Friends.
Make,
What are they?
make little happy friends.
I'll play 40k, not friends.
I want to win everything. I have to win. I'd rather leave a game with a story I'll always remember than winning. Like, so what?
Like, I still remember from when I was, let's say, 13-ish, and I had Jane Czar charging into my librarian on the other side of a river, and I used a psychic power and pushed her back in the river, and we had a rule where she floated down the river like 2d6 inches, and then her next turn she got out and recharged me, and I pushed her in the river again, just to try and get her away. And that was literally 30 years ago, and I still remember the model. I still remember the river that we'd made out of paper and blue felt tips.
Nice.
And it was fantastic.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it. And also the beauty of like playing that kind of game with like-minded friends. That community energy is important, I think, to also have these memories.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
And you string a set of battles together, and suddenly that's a campaign.
Yep.
And you've got a narrative of the way it works. Whatever happened in one battle, you go, okay, the next one, if you won that battle, okay, maybe you've pushed me back and I'm trying to reinforce. Okay, let's play this mission.
Yep.
And rather than selecting random objectives, let's pick a mission that matches what's happening in this campaign.
Yeah, making it your story.
Absolutely.
It also inspires your creative part of your mind, at least, and keeps it active. Another pillar of this hobby is to make your own stories, make your own models, and have fun with it, regardless of the outcome. It's the journey that mattered in the end, not really the destination. And that can be almost literal in this hobby, because you have fun throughout your hobbying process, reading your rules, you're reading the other different options you can have, the campaign that you play, or just multiple games you have.
It's the real meat of it for me.
Same. That's why I loved the condition. I loved it. And I can't wait to see how my Thousand Sons do.
I am so looking forward to playing that.
Yeah.
Whether it's with Eldar or whether it's with Lamenters, I'm loving the opportunity to match wits. What you were saying about it's the journey, not the destination. I love rolling the dice. It doesn't matter what they land on.
Yep, true.
I think that's probably it for the Meelas this week. If you are in Abu Dhabi or the UAE and visiting us sounds cool, then drop us a DM on Instagram at ad.wargaming and come say hi one weekend. Also, you can use our Insta to tag us in your Blanchitsu inspired models. That's ad.wargaming. Bring us your weird inquisitors, your haunted guardsmen, your rusty cultists, your tragic knights, plague pilgrims, forgotten saints, mutant scavengers, doomed heroes, and grim little weirdos. We'd love to see them all. If you've got this far, thank you very much for listening to the show. You can subscribe to the Meelas podcast on YouTube. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and much more. Thank you, Ibrahim, for your time.
Thank you, Simon, for hosting us.
Thank you, Adam, for your joining us again.
Always a pleasure.
And we'll see you all in our next episode.
And don't forget to start new armies.